Welcome back to From the Scriptwriter's Table. This is actually where I do a lot of the producing work, and I've moved down my recording studio into this. So, what you're about to see is not my normal presentation of how to write audio dramas. In each of my presentations thus far, I talk about joining Winding Trails Media on a monthly discussion called the Scriptwriter's Table, which is what this group of podcasts is from. And normally I don't record those conversations, but with the permission of those who attended, I did this time, and I'm going to share that with you. So that's coming up next. Stay tuned. And I'm recording us just because I can post this up there on YouTube a little bit. So
okay.
Anyway, how's your writing going today?
Well, I'm a little stuck in the doldrums of the middle part of everything. I've got first drafts of everything pretty well mapped out. Now going back and rewriting, and it's that middle section that's always tough. You can think of a good beginning, and you know where you want to end up, but it's like how to get there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the mill sag, as they say.
So I'm kind of like that with a lot of the scripts. Two of the scripts I think are finished more or less.
Oh, excellent!
But they're short ones. They're the ones that I was aiming at Melanie's,
that humorous anthology she wants to.
Yeah, the humorous anthology. They were both be about 10 minutes long, so they were easier to finish up.
Wow!
But I'll take a look at them. Well, they're just kind of crazy stuff. They're almost like goon show style, almost parodies of fairy tales more than the fairy tales themselves, but humorous in that way. So, yeah, they were fun to write. Those were just fun.
Excellent. I've written over the last 4 days about 40 pages of script.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm shocked and amazed. Something finally broke.
No, that's good.
I had writer's block for I don't even want to think about how many years, and I do mean years.
And this was a serial? This is a
serial. The serial is basically going to be I hate to use the term comic book hero type serial, but it is. I'm going to create 12 issues for this one, and then I'm going to write a couple other serials, which also will be 12 issues. And then hopefully, depending on popularity, we'll continue them for next year as well.
Oh, okay.
So that way they're like one a month release.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting way of writing it, because I'm looking at this. I'm actually picturing, normally when I write, I picture a movie in my head, and this time I'm picturing more of a comic book in my head. So, because I'm not sticking with one person point of view all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's the concept of what we're writing in this audio script's a little different. So I've got the announcer. It does, like, if you think about a comic book, you have meanwhile back at, so the announcer
parallel stories.
Yeah, it's been good. It's taken off. Was interesting to make this kick off, and those minor changes in how you think about a story can do a lot.
Oh yeah.
And that's what happened here. This original concept of this story is a woman. Okay, the woman is trained from birth to be a ninja, and some people say, "Oh, they don't exist anymore." We can argue and discuss that one at a later time. But her in the original story, her dad, who also was a ninja, is a cop. Mm-hmm. And the story opens that he was shot while on duty on the force. On the police force. So, and it wasn't shot during the ninja part. He was actually doing his cop work. He was vigilante at night, like I've always saying that. And all these other characters were cops. Well, I don't know why, but I rethought it, and I changed him being shot to supposedly committing suicide.
Mm.
And it's very clear in the very first issue or very first episode She doesn't. She believes as much that he committed suicide as I would believe that we're getting free money from the government tomorrow. You know what I mean? It's not like it's happening. Especially considering that he hung himself as a method of suicide. And I have a character. If a character is going through this, like, yeah, in her mind, if he committed seppuku, she could see that. And if he took poison, she could see that. Hanging, not likely. And not that he was suicidal, it's just because of their honor that they could see that. She could see that part, but not the hanging. It just didn't make sense. So it starts off with that investigation. There's a lot that's going on in the background, and it's slowly going to evolve. But so I changed it from an obvious murder to suicide, and then I changed him from a cop to a reporter, still doing the old style newspaper. So I'm looking at the way in which the news media has changed over time as well, and whether or not there's still a place for newspapers, and it just suddenly that just kicked it off.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And then so she's investigating her father's death because she doesn't believe it's a suicide. So you've got that storyline going, and then you could bring in another storyline, right? I mean, she could be investigating something more current.
Oh yeah, the what the heck? I don't care if I give stuff away. So he gets killed because he's been doing exposés showing corruption in this fictional city. The fictional city, the organized crime syndicate has now completely unified under one person. And they're getting ready to release a new drug that's based on cannabis, LSD, and something else from opium that would be able to be ingested or smoked, if you will, through using vaporizers. The modern day e-cigarette.
Yeah, e-cigarette, right?
And it looks the same. I mean, how can you tell if somebody's smoking or vaping, I should say, nicotine or another substance? You can't. So this is being spread, and then in the city, actually not just in the city, in this fictional state. I never say the name of the state that they're in, but the state has legalized cannabis. So the organized crime syndicate has leased farmers' land to be able to grow what looks like cannabis, but it's actually a hybrid, genetically altered or genetically manipulated organism that is growing looking like a cannabis plant, but it's actually got these other properties involved that when you extract it, that's what gives the drug. Then unfortunately, and this is not me being on soapbox necessarily, when we write, we get social issues. I mean, we do write.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
But, as far as cannabis is concerned, I don't care if somebody ingests it. You do to your body what you're going to do to your body. My concerns about that is completely separate.
Yeah.
Fortunately, according to the various human rights watchdogs, there's a spike in human trafficking or human slavery that goes along wherever this stuff is legalized, be it in different countries or in the 2 states it's been legalized in here. Not just, when you say that, human trafficking, most people think the sex trade, more prostitutes, etc. And it's not that. It's people who are being snuck in or being taken off the streets or whatever and are being used to cultivate the plants. Almost like an old-fashioned plantation system, which we got away from back in the 1860s. Well, and that's never a real discussion was really brought up on that argument. So what I'm looking at here is they are using the organized crime syndicates working in the background, bringing up this drug and using human slaves to cultivate it, and that becomes a part of what she will investigate, because her father was investigating this as a reporter and gets killed before he ever can do anything with it.
Okay, so his death is more current then than not way in the past. Okay.
Yeah, it's modern day. Alternative world, but modern day.
But she's had enough time to grieve at least a little bit before she starts looking into the, or maybe this is part of the grieving process. Huh?
Exactly. She's got to grieve while she's having to figure out what her dad was doing.
Oh, okay.
So, and literally pick up his mantle of doing what he and the family had done in the past, while still going on with a heavy aspect of now she's alone. I mean, there's one friend that she has that knows what she is. It's a kind of a mentor type character.
Mm-hmm.
Which also, that's a whole nother soapbox. He's a veteran who's homeless.
Okay.
When she was younger. It's a backstory there. But so she's got to figure out, she's got to grieve. And she's got to repress her grieving to do the criminal investigation she needs to do.
Right.
Expose what's going on to a system that's been corrupted by the same organized crime syndicate.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be an interesting fight as I write all this. And while the plot technically is in my head, sorry about that.
That's okay. That's all right.
While the plot's in my head, I'm basically pantsing it in another way, because it's like, okay, I know where I'm going with this. I know what steps she needs to do the investigation, but it's figuring out, as you said, the middle ground as you're writing, and I've got to make sure it's still juicy and enticing to the reader, or I should say the listener.
Yeah.
In order to keep it going. So it makes it an interesting time, and considering each episode is 30 minutes long, and you're talking about you wrote 10-minute pieces, and I'm like, how do you write 10-minute pieces? I'm struggling with 30.
You really have to jam it all in there.
You do.
I mean, it's like, okay, I got 10 minutes. I know that's 10 pages.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do in the first 2 pages? Okay, I establish everything, and then there's something going on in the first 3 or 4 pages and 5 pages. Oh, I better start getting into the climax so I can wrap it up.
Exactly.
And that's basically what you do. And
yeah,
I had a lot of fun with those, just kind of going over them, squeezing them down, getting them real, every word that I wanted in there to count, and also making sure every character had something they wanted. It's like doing the character development and story development, even if they're kind of parody fairy tales. The characters still want things,
Mm-hmm.
So that was fun. That was fun to do that, and also just explore. What I like to do in radio is to explore what you could do, where you can go, because as so many of the people have said, Arch Obler and others, you can be up in space 1 second and then down on Earth the next second. You can be 1,000 years ago and in present or in the future, and you can jump so fast seamlessly in radio. You can't do that in film as much. I mean, Stanley Kubrick did it in 2001, throwing the bone in the air. He jumped, nice little jump cut there, but you don't do that a lot in film, because you got all the settings and everything to consider. But radio gives you that freedom, to do these impossible things. So I really like exploring that.
I do too, and it's been an interesting exploration so far. And you're able, in novels, you can write from different character points of view as you go.
Yeah.
And, the whole debate of how can you tell if somebody's thinking or not, it's, authors have different ways, like italicizing and so on and so forth. We both have written regular stories. But the radio lets you get inside of the character's head so much more because of the trick of a narration. So in other words, like I'm doing this right now and I'm dropping my voice, but softness and that just draws the person in, and that's like being inside the head.
Exactly. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think it's a more intimate medium that way. Because and it's immediate. I mean, there's an immediate response to it. So that's all I was going to say.
No, that's all right. Yeah. And it makes it easier to tell when they're thinking versus talking. And trick is with everything, that thin line between show and tell. But like film, the show and tell line might be here, the novel might be here, but radio, it's over here. because
Yeah.
everything's being done by dialogue.
You are telling a lot, but also showing at the same time.
Exactly. It's an interesting juggling act.
I've found too. I guess in writing this over the few weeks I've been doing it, I've discovered that sometimes I'll just sit down and I'll let a character just start talking.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of trying to put her in a box so quickly. And then I go back and then I'll start to make a dialogue out of it, just giving her 2 or 3 lines and then having somebody respond, and 2 or 3 more lines, so that it breaks it up that way. But that way I get to what the character's really thinking and feeling, rather than trying to always balance it with another character. So I start with a monologue and end up with a dialogue, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the way everybody else would write or do it. That's the way I've figured out doing it for at least some characters.
I haven't done it exactly like that, but I've gotten to a point where there's sections like, I don't want a monologue that's running for 2 or 3 pages. That's going to put somebody to sleep.
No,
yeah. So it's like, I'm looking at this going, I need to toss this into a dialogue, put another character there and we'll explore it.
It really does force you to do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's good because, as you say, you don't want to, if you get caught in this dialogue swamp, then the listener feels like, oh my God, how long do I have to listen to this guy talk, before we get onto something? And then but if you give them another character to respond to, and you dramatize the dialogue, the monologue, okay, now you're back into scene again, which is good.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the latest that's going on here. I've gotten 40 pages done in 4 days. I'm shocked that it's flowing so well.
Yeah, well, that's great. It's great when it flows like that.
It is. I really want to get this first season of, it's called Kairen, but which is, the name's on purpose. I'll tell you that in a second. But I want to get that done this whole month. If I can get that 12 episodes done this month and just edit next month, then I can get the next series written. So
that's good.
Because I need scripts.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm working on about 8 of them. I thought.
Wow.
Because I like to, I bounce back and forth. Like, oh, today this script is calling me now. I'm more somehow in the mood to work with these characters, and their story seems more compelling. And then that gives me a break from the others, and I can go back and see how they're doing. And so far, that seems to work okay. Except I'm kind of stuck on all of them now. So.
You have to love it when suddenly the brain just goes, "Up, wait, I'm stuck. I'm not going anywhere. You need to think about me for a while."
Yeah, and you have to respect that and not try to force it.
Yeah,
I don't want to force it because it just. I mean, I can still work on it, but I don't want to force anything as I'm working on it.
I find when I force it, it becomes the worst writing I can do.
Yeah. So you have to kind of entice it to come out. Come out and play.
Exactly. Like the cat hiding underneath the couch. Come on.
Yeah. So. Yeah. When I was a student, there was a cat living under one of our buildings, where students were living, and this cat had kittens, and the kittens were wild, and you could play with them if you had a little string and dangled it. But as soon as they looked up and saw the string was attached to your hand, they got all spooked. And I'm like, that's for me, that was always an analogy of the muse. You get the muse to play with you, but if they saw that you were trying to control it too much, the muse runs away.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? Good.
I'm glad you posted that thing about. I guess it was on the last newsletter about the average ages that.
Oh yeah.
To these, and then I was a little confused about, or maybe you can just tell me. You said that the BBC accounts for 80% of all listeners. To what? Exactly?
Not the BBC. The UK.
The UK.
Which shocked me. I really did not. With anything to do with entrepreneurs, they always are talking about you shoot for the local market first. Don't go shooting for worldwide.
Yeah.
I did, which was my goal. I knew that the platforms where this stuff will be at once I finally have it produced will automatically force it to be a worldwide audience. But you put a book on Amazon, it's automatically a worldwide audience. But the majority of that should be a local market.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been watching to see who's coming to the Facebook page and especially to the website. And the numbers have been changing since I posted it. The American section is growing, but at the time in which I wrote that article, it was literally, I'm rounding numbers, 87% of my market was coming out of the UK. I'm like,
Yeah.
how? I mean, I'm shocked. I mean, I know Right Pack Radio, which Winding Trails does, has a international market
Yeah.
because I have people contact me from Japan, from Germany. I'm like, how did you find us?
Yeah. Well,
I
that's
mean,
good though. That's good that you're out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
The scary thing is that the UK, when you're with the UK, you've got the BBC to compete with, and they're like the gold standard of radio productions. It's like, but people are looking for other things, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
different things and different points of view, which I'm grateful for, and I've had to turn down scripts. I've gotten scripts from overseas so far, so.
Oh, good.
Hopefully that continues. By the way, anybody who watches this, because we are recording, it'll give you an idea of what these talks are like. Wherever you're at, send us a script. We do like internationals. Just remember, write it radio style, not movie, theater, copy paste from a story. Just write it radio style. It forces you into a different format.
Yeah, and go to those links that David has posted because those are very good for how to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't create the content on there, but they are good. And speaking of BBC, that one PDF that's on there is from BBC. So
yeah.
how to format.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've been also listening to some of the episodes on the ZBS Foundation Network. That's it's a U.S. based guy who put out I think I told you about the Fourth Tower of Inverness was the starting thing back in the 70s. And he's done a lot of more modern, I mean, through the years he's been doing these things and finding out, like, for a while there a lot of his stuff was going out in 3-minute segments, and he was getting drive time people that were listening and commenting on it. Wow. This is back in the 80s and 90s, I think. And so he's been kind of discovering trends as he's gone through and done these various radio shows. A lot of them are for sale, but I've been going back and listening to his free samples, and they're quite interesting because they kind of modernize. I mean, we study the classics and the 1940s and 30s radio shows, but he has a more modern approach to it and what you can do with it. It's almost like a modern form of editing, of radio editing, rather than the older style of editing. I mean, it's still using the same principles, but it's just got a different feel to it. So I'm finding that's interesting because that's giving me other ideas about what I can do. And
it's Z as in zebra, B as in Bravo, S as in Sierra?
Yeah, ZBS Foundation. If you just search for that, you'll find it. The guy who runs it's called Meatball Fulton. That's his name. He writes all of them, and they're just well produced things. So, and I think he has some links to some other production companies that are out there producing things that are interesting too, just to kind of get a feel for other, what other people are doing.
Yeah, I've been checking out Pendant Audio and Big Finish and a few other ones, but this sounds interesting. I need to check this one out.
Yeah, I can send you the link as well. But
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I did get Arch Obler's essay on the art of radio writing photographed. I took it from the book I brought the other night.
Yay!
And it's 14 pages. I'm trying to put it into a PDF file so it's one continuous scroll. I have to figure out how to do that. So I'll send that to you then. And
I appreciate that.
Yep.
And I guess I'm gonna break the fourth wall here again, since I'm sharing this recording so people can get an idea of what these things are like. Arch Obler, for those who don't know anything about him, he was a mastermind when it came to writing for radio, and in my opinion, actually quite a lot of people's opinion, and created stories that were like the Twilight Zone before the Twilight Zone came about.
Yeah.
In fact, I think Rod Sterling referred to him constantly as being one of the inspirations.
I think he probably was an inspiration for him. Yeah.
So if you find anything about Arch's writing and so forth, read it. It might be books out of date because of the time period, but read it.
Yeah, wherever you could find it, it's worth reading. His scripts and then his comments on what he did and the history of how some of the things came into being. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah, after this is over with, this recording's over with, I'm going to be running to the local library. I know they don't have it, but I'm going to see if I can't get it through interlibrary loan.
That's how I did it.
I'll tell you, writing audio is bringing back an art that it needs to come back. I mean, we're lucky with the modern day internet with podcasting and so forth, but God, it was almost a lost art.
And they again had the luxury, and if you want to call it that, of producing something every week, so that that was a training ground. They could actually. It's just like in the movies when you had the studios running everything, and you worked and worked and worked on films until you learned your craft. And every week you had to put something out, good, bad, or ugly. And sometimes there was ugly. And then you had sponsors to have to satisfy as well, because they were the main ones behind it in the United States anyway.
Right.
So, but that's how they got to be so good, because they just did so many of them. So there is out of quantity will come quality, as Ray Bradbury once said.
True. And also, too, some of those old-time radio dramas were being written both for radio and television at the same time.
Yeah, in the transition period, yeah.
I can think of, for example, Gunsmoke was a big one that would do that. And there were others, too, but that's the one that just pops right to my mind.
Yeah, yeah. I was amazed, too, in just reading a lot of about the radio history, that it seemed like so many stories were first done on radio, and then if they were a hit there, filmmakers would pick it up, and they would do screenplays of it. The Portrait of Jenny, that was a famous Hollywood film, starred Joseph Cotten, and it was first a radio play.
Wow. Okay.
And it was taken from a book or a story. So I'm like, it's like radio becomes the rough draft for a film, because you can work out the story, you can get the characters cast, so people can see their heads, and then when you want to go film it, you have that kind of basis to work from. So that amazed me. I didn't realize that it had, just quite often it was radio first and then films.
Yeah, and knowing what I know now of, because I've been learning on the job as I've been writing radio and doing my videos of how to write for radio, let's call it what it is, versus radio audio. It's the same darn thing.
Yeah.
But it's amazing as I watch films and I watch television, how much of an impact radio had. Okay, the formatting of the scripts are different, but yet the transition between that bridge. I guess I'm not really explaining this right, because that's more of an intuition I've got, but I can literally look at a television script and a radio script. I almost knocked the mic there, and you can almost see how they bridge. I've taken a couple, like, for example, the old Gunsmoke ones where I could know this one was done on television, this one was done on radio, and see how it played out next to each other. And it's just amazing. It's television was born out of the radio. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah.
And now radio is coming back. audio is coming.
As it needs to. And of course, in the UK, it never left. But
no, bless the British on that one.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because, as what I've read about radio play history or audio play history, audio plays took off more here in the United States than they did over in England, but yet England or UK has kept it alive, where here it kind of dwindled out in the 50s, maybe 60s.
Yeah, by the 60s, I think it was pretty much gone.
Yeah. I mean, NPR, bless their hearts, did keep it going a little bit. They did. If it wasn't for NPR, I never would have heard Star Wars, the radio play, and maybe never gotten interested in it in the first place. But they still do. I think it's This American Life is their podcast and so forth. But yeah, it's just
they're very there's various or kind of like true stories that they want people to tell quite often. So there are a couple of shows that do that, which keep that going. Yeah, so it's nice that it's in the upswing again.
Yeah,
and there'll be a nice lot of listeners out there who want good stories.
They want good stories, and that's the goal. We don't Winding Trails Media. We want good stories.
Yeah,
we want to write good stories. Stories about what mean. We don't want. Okay, now I'm commercializing. Okay, but the goal is to write a story about the human experience, not a plot-driven story.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I'm sorry to say to some of my favorite authors who also wrote for radio as well as books and movies, like Earl Stanley Gardner. He was very plot-driven. Perry Mason, just
right.
One out there that he was known for. How the hell he wrote so much? I've read books on how he wrote, but
maybe that's part of his lawyer training.
Yeah, I guess so. I leave it as my lofty goal that someday I'll get that level, but I haven't gotten there yet.
I guess the one thing, too, as I'm going over my scripts that Arch Obler impressed me with was that you have about 5 to 10 seconds to really engage the listening audience and keep them going. And it's not like a short story where maybe you have a page. It's not like a novel where you got maybe a couple of pages or a chapter even, where people will put up with it. But in radio, if they don't hear something in the first 5 or 10, 20 seconds that engages them, they're off doing something else.
Yep.
And
why not?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to revise everything with that in mind. So I look at every line, everything. Is there something interesting here? Is it furthering what I wanted to do? Is the character revealing more, or are they trying to hide something? That makes it interesting too.
And by what they don't say and what they don't do, that also reveals the character.
Right. And it doesn't mean we can't use pauses, I mean, there are moments where you want a character not to answer right away, maybe take a beat or a second before they answer, because there's acting going on there, and that tells you something about their response. So it doesn't have to be just, quick talking all the time, overlapping dialogue and stuff. It can be paced in a certain way.
I'll tell you what, right now I feel like I've got a small advantage in that category because for the last 4 weeks, 4 weeks before this, I was actually taking a voiceover course.
Yes.
Professionally done.
Right.
So much more. There's so much more I need to learn on how to do acting myself, but just being there and watching how the teacher, he really wasn't, well, he is a professor, but he's a professor outside of the studio. This was done at a studio, but just how much there is into the direction that needs to happen. And we weren't doing radio polls. We were doing voiceover commercials, and it's a different animal, but that's like saying a Arabian horse and a quarter horse are different animals. Yeah, they've got different distinctions to them, but they're both horses. So it falls into that. And when you write, where I'm going with this is, as I'm writing these audio plays, I'm looking at it from an actor's point of view as well, which I'm an amateur there, but I'm looking at it from an actor's point of view going, okay, I don't want to do too much direction. How much direction do I want to give to the actor? How much do they need? And how much do I actually shut up and let them act it out? Let them be the character.
Right. Let them interpret the words that you put down there. Yeah.
Exactly. Because they're going to bring something. They can bring something the writer didn't even realize was in the page.
Right. Oh yeah, that'll come up in rehearsals. I know. Suddenly you'll get a whole different view of your character because you hear it through this actor portraying it, and that's kind of nice and fun when it happens like that.
Most certainly.
Yeah. I remember doing some of this acting in college when we were trying to revive radio on our own in the 1970s when it was pretty well dead, and I just remember, doing so much with so little. You could have one little line, but the way you said it, the way you phrased it, where you broke the pauses or the took a breath. All that stuff worked into it, and that really made me aware of how much acting you can do with just your voice. You don't need all the hand gestures and facial and all that. You can really say so much with just the voice.
Yeah, voice is a very interesting instrument we have, and that was a that was a term used by the guy who was teaching, and it's accurate. This is literally a wind instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, as like a flute or any of the other winds that you'll see in an orchestra. It's amazing how much range a voice can have if you're willing to get outside your comfort zone, and that's the hard part. Getting outside the comfort zone, seeing where your voice could go, how old your voice can sound, how young you can make it sound.
Yes.
How you put emotion into it.
Right, the emotional part of it. Very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I could sit here, and I've actually been doing this as practice. I can literally just open up a book, and let's say, okay, I'm reading completely cold here. This is just doing a read. Why? She breathed. Why do you care for me? Why? Blessed saints. As he looked at her, the answer to that question was inexpressible. Okay, did I just put everybody to sleep there? Versus, let's see if I can do a female voice. I haven't really practiced this yet, and I didn't warm up for this. Why? She breathed. Why do you care for me? Why, blessed saints? I just lost my place. Why, blessed saints? As he looked at her, the answer to that question was inexplicable. Just that. I don't consider myself that good of an actor. So,
but it changes it a lot because you've got the emotional content there. Yeah.
And that's something really important to remember as we're writing these plays, or it's something to remember too when you write a short story or a novel. But I'm really finding that these plays take it to that. There we go. I knew I was going to hit that eventually. To that next level that even that theater and movies can bring, but they've got the visual aspect that cuts the audio off, if you will, at the knees sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, this is so much more a participatory medium. The audience will have to participate because we, as the audience, we're the ones setting the setting, decorating the set, picturing the ocean, whatever you've got. We're the ones participating in that.
Right.
And sometimes, I was reading this essay by Arch Oboler, and he said to do more understatement of things. He was warning radio writers in 1940, don't overwrite. Just suggest, point us in the direction, and then let the audience take over from there. But getting that balance, how much to suggest and how much to let the audience do.
And a lot of that, I think, is done in the editing stage, not in the initial writing.
Oh, yeah. I think like what you were doing, writing 40 pages, just getting it out there. Now you come back, and now you start to take away and boil it down to that essence and trying to figure out where that balance is at that point. Not when you're just initially writing it like a first draft.
No, not at all. And also, too, it's good to have, it's easier to cut than it is to pad a story, too. So.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Something you probably saw me do this while you were talking. Today, Brad R. Cook, who is part of the St. Louis Writers Guild, did a presentation on points of view. Now, he did it from the writer of a book aspect of it.
Right.
But what's out there, a couple of books have done this, is a total story written as a second point of view. Everything is you. And I got thinking, in radio, that's so much easier. There was a show, classic radio time, called The Whistler. I know it ran 1940s to 1950s. I think it was 41 or 42 to 55, where they used the second point of view, but they used it in the second point of view as the narrator was addressing the character in the story rather than to the audience. But yet, the idea was that character was the listener. And it just made it. I still look back there. I still listen to those shows, And after listening to Brad talk about point of view, it was just like, wow, that trick was back then, and I think it's played out better in the radio version than it can be done in a book, or even in the movie version where you get Ferris Bueller's Day Off or Deadpool, or that where some of the character just talks to the camera, thus the audience,
Right.
Fourth wall. I think there's a deeper dig in that. No, it's not a deeper dig. It's actually a seduction to the listener when you do it on radio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like you're playing. Okay, I just got a Disney image in my head, but if I remember Pinocchio, you had Jiminy Cricket. His conscience was sitting on his shoulder, and kind of a devil was over here, and that's what the actors' voices are turned into as they read, and that's something you can write to. Is that temptation of the little character talking in the ear, going, "But you really don't want to do that, do you? You want to be go for it. You want to do this evil thing." So or
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I remember in going back and listening to some of the classic stuff that was recommended. I go to look on 15 best scary things to listen for in an old-time radio. One of them used the addressing you as a participant in the story, like you're there and this guy's fixing pork chops for you.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting dinner ready for you, and he's telling you a story like you're the one listening to the story he's telling, and it was used to great effect in that one story. And it really involves you, and then by the end, you don't want to be involved because of the way the story goes. So, you don't hear it in all the plays, but it's a great approach to do it if you really want to draw the listener in, like they're part of the story. As you mentioned, I think in one of the podcasts about kind of like the chorus or the implied listener, somebody who's
the proxy listener,
proxy listener, yes, the one.
Which, and in not using it as scary, but that was done with such great effect with the New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
Mm-hmm.
Basil Rathbone.
Yes.
Wow. Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce. And just the way you fed into it, and you, as a listener, you just found yourself falling into that story so simple, so easily.
Yeah.
Well. So, what were some of the stories you're working on? You told me about the fairy tales.
Well, I have one. I'm trying to think of the ones that are more near completion now. Let's see. I have one that I like about, and I may have mentioned this last time we talked. It's about a slightly futuristic society, which they've pretty much destroyed all the art that they've had. They've had some culture wars, and the artworks are gone. So what they've ended up doing, because somebody figured out how to do it, they are able to bring artworks from the past into their time. It's kind of a way of, I don't know, bending time or stretching it or something, so that you can actually bring an object from the past into the present, set it up in a museum, and have people come and experience it. So that's kind of the science fiction part of that. And the idea is, well, what if you were able to actually bring an artist from the past then? And somehow a character figures out how to do that, and then the implications are, well, why did you bring them? Is he going to be able to survive here? There's some family history involved, and I like the way it's playing out among the characters. And because we want to consider an audience, so I have the characters are kind of youngish, in their 20s, maybe 30s, something like that, with some older characters too. So that's kind of the editing that I'm going back and revising for that. But the whole idea of, what do we borrow from the past? Do we ruin something by borrowing it from the past like that? I mean, if you rip something out, I guess that's a time travel paradox. Are you going to disturb the past too much by borrowing, even if you're just borrowing, not taking?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a story that I like. And one of the things I like about it is there's a sense of, and I think you can do this on radio so well too. The one character has been taken from Renaissance Italy, and he'll speak English because that's what we're writing in, but he's supposed to be speaking Renaissance Italian.
Okay.
And the modern or the slightly futuristic society doesn't really understand that language anymore.
Right.
And there's kind of an android character who's pretending like he does. So he's interpreting, even though he doesn't know all the words, and he's actually getting a lot of it wrong. So you hear what the artist says, and then you hear what the interpretation is, and there's a lot of interplay there, which I'm having fun with. So you can have humor, with that.
Yeah, that could sound interesting.
And again, it's pure audio. You don't have to worry about sets or anything. It's just like, what are they saying to each other? And, when the translator gets it all wrong, then we're on the joke. They're not in on the joke so much. But.
Right. And yet there's so much. That's a constant in reality. How often do we mistranslate stuff?
Oh, I'm sure we constantly do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There goes the cat. Okay.
So that's one of them. And then another one is about, I think I mentioned this before too, where the society has come to a point where most things are owned by at least 5 corporations, and they're actually able to kind of monitor your dreams, and they can charge you for content.
Yeah. Yes, I remember that.
And they've actually gotten rid of the public domain, except there are some characters they're called pubdomers who they're from the public domain, and they run through dreams and they try to wreak some havoc because they don't want everything to be owned by these corporations. And yeah, so I'm still working on that one, and it's kind of like you kind of start out kind of normal and then go into the dream world part, which gets a little crazier as we go. But so I'm trying to find the balance in there. And
that's the trick. But I remember you talking about that story. That should be very interesting.
I hope so, because I'm trying to include as much dream theory as I've studied over the years. I mean, I even wrote a master's thesis using dream theory. So, I mean, I'm not being pedantic about it, but to bring it in where it's appropriate and to find the humor in it too. I think it's funny sometimes the way various dream theories have been proposed, and sometimes they're almost opposite of what this could mean this or this could mean this, depending on the dream theory you're using. So there's room for that little interplay going on. I think because of so much old time stuff, they used scary stories. I kind of like that, and I'm adapting another one from a short story that did influence Rod Serling.
Rod Serling, yeah.
So I'm actually taking one of those short stories and kind of adapting it for an American audience. It's a British story, but I'm going to set it more in the South. It's supposed to be a hot environment, so I'm kind of it could be in southern Missouri, it could be in Arkansas, it could be in Tennessee, something like that. It's kind of out in the back, facing the problem of, okay, if it's more modern, what happens when you've got cell phones, right? So, but I'm making the place inaccessible, so the cell phone doesn't work, and the story will work then. If the guy could call, the story would be over. But he's not able to call; he can't reach anybody. So, and that's been kind of fun to adapt that. That's another adaptation. But there's another original one I've got, which is involving, actually based on a job that I had one time working at my uncle's nursery. I was stacking bricks for days. Just they needed bricks on the landscaping jobs. So I would stack these piles of bricks onto pallets, and then they would take the pallets off to the jobs. And you had to be careful because there were spiders clinging to the bottoms of these bricks when you'd stack them.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm using that experience, and it's mostly between 2 characters, and it's about where these bricks had been before, and did they soak up some of the environment where they had, the building they had been in before, and is it affected them, and now how is it affecting the characters who are out in this kind of lonely place stacking these bricks.
That could be fun to play with. I mean,
it's a lot of fun because you got the sound of the bricks being stacked, so there's this clink thing going on. When the clinking stops, there's some interesting things happening there.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that's another horror one. Oh gosh, I can't think of what else. There's a couple more, but those are the ones that came to mind.
I had a story idea came to mind today that I was going to do a science fiction space western as my next write-up after I get done with the one I'm currently, but this might move it. with all the discussion of racism that's going on right now, it's kind of I've been trying to figure out, how do I tell a story based on that? How do I tell one without being blatantly hears about racism? And an approach in which I have in mind, it's been done. So I'm trying to think how I can do it separately. I'm going to I need to get back and read Alfred Bester's work,
Oh yeah.
especially The Demolished Man and so forth, because
Mhm.
my mind's going down that road. I'm not sure where it's going to go, but I might be changing my schedule up after I get done with the 12 for Kairin. Then I'm going to move to this as a possibility.
Oh yeah, that's good. Oh, Alfie Bester, what a great old writer.
Oh yeah, he wrote, and speaking of radio writers, he wrote for radio. He wrote books. I don't know if he wrote television or not, but
Oh, he did write television. Yeah, quite a
I'm
bit.
not surprised. And anyone who's listening to this conversation doesn't know who Alfred Bester is. He's the man who won the first Nebula ever, Nebula Award.
Yeah, The Stars, My Destination, and The Demolished Man. Those are his two really great novels. And I don't know, did anyone ever do The Demolished Man as a radio play? That would be so good, because it's about reading minds. It's about being able to read minds.
I'm not sure how you would convert it, because he did word pictures, which for what, as you said, reading minds makes beautiful sense. As telepaths are talking to each other, you get this, what would be sentences going like this.
Right.
Sentences are going like this, and they're all making all different pictures as everybody's combining into this conversation. I'm not sure how you can do that on radio, but that would be an interesting challenge.
Yeah, all kinds of filters, I guess, and editing ways to crossfade, and I don't know. I mean, you'd have to play with it.
Okay, I'm going to think about that one.
Yeah.
But that's going to be fun. But yeah, so I'm looking down that road in a different way to look at racism, if you will, and way to throw that out there. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what Rod Serling was doing in The Twilight Zone, wasn't he? He was taking those stories but addressing a lot of the modern day concerns that they wouldn't let him put on TV at the time.
Yeah. And Gene Roddenberry got in there on the TV with Star Trek.
And Gene Roddenberry did kind of the similar thing. Okay, they won't let me talk about this in modern day. I'll put it in the future, and we'll put it out in space, and nobody had a problem with it.
Exactly. Now radio again. All righty. Oops, sorry. Looking at the time, I'm trying to.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Yeah, when we have a few more people in this in the future, it won't just be two people talking all the time. So there'll be a lot of voices chiming in.
Exactly. So I'm going to use that as a plug. If you're watching this, come join us for the next. This occurs every month. Come and join us. We'd love to hear from you. New voices.
Yeah, it's a great way to, even if you just share a little bit of what you're working on, it's a great way to kind of get you moving again on it. When you put the words out there and say, oh, this is how far I am with it, then it's like, oh yeah, now I can do this with it now, or maybe take it in this direction.
Yeah.
So I think it's helpful for the writing process.
I think so. And writing is such a lonely activity, shall we say, or lonely job, that gives also a chance to reach out and talk to people who know what this is all about. And we speak just like any industry, we speak our own language. We have our own shortcuts.
Yeah.
It's good to connect up. In fact, while I'm talking to you right now, I know my eyes are probably looking elsewhere. I'm actually logging on to Zoom right now, and sorry, what did I type? Getting ready to make the next month's hopefully I typed that right. Getting next month's nope, I did type wrong. Yeah, I mistyped something. Getting next month's ready for okay, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Oh yes I do. I just realized it. Let me guess. Okay, now I give up. I did something But I'll get next month's posted so that people can join us early.
Oh, right.
So, well, almost an hour's up, so I'm going to go ahead and say see you. Actually, I'll see you physically because we both do a writing table together. But so I'll see you Thursday, hopefully.
Okay. Yeah, I plan to be there.
Excellent. And thanks for joining.
All right. Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Okay. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.